We're live. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another Dapr community call. It's number 119, March 5th, 2025. And we're here with 3 hosts. This is the first time that we have 3 hosts. It's amazing.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever done this before.
No.
I don't think we've ever had all 3 community managers on at the same time. So I'm very excited about today.
Yeah, this is the best community call ever, I think. Yeah, this is great. Shout out again to Dapr for sponsoring our live streaming software. So we are streaming to YouTube, which is the best place to watch because you can actually leave some comments there that we can see. And we're also streaming to our LinkedIn page and also to our Twitter X account. All right. The agenda today, well, 2 very important items are here. We have a new community manager who will introduce herself very shortly. Then finally, Dapr 1.15 is released. It took a really, really long time, but it's a major release. A lot of stuff has happened there. So we'll share some details then. I'll run through some of the Python Quickstarts for workflow, which is now stable, and the new Conversation API. Originally, we had with Waldo also joining to do the same thing for the .NET SDK, but he got ill, so we'll have him on at the next community call. And as usual, we will end with the community show and tell. Whew. All right. And yeah, welcome everyone. I see lots of people already saying hi and mentioning where they're from. That's always nice to hear. Cecil, you're also both an attendee but also hosting. So have you like a split personality now? Or?
Well, I figured, there's so many of us here. I might as well like show some love in the chat as well. And also just, it's always just great to see, all our community members just kind of sharing where they're from. And, I consider myself a community member too. So I kind of just wanted to, share participate in what's going on.
I like it. Yeah, I like it a lot. Yeah, and yeah, it's nice to see all these familiar faces, right? Because a lot of these people are also familiar in the Dapr Discord or other channels. So good to see you here. Perfect. Okay, let's start first with welcoming Dana. Hi, Dana. Welcome as a new Dapr community manager.
Hi, everyone. Really happy to be here.
Yeah. So I think just start with like a small introduction, right? So people get to know you.
This is my first call, and happy to join officially as the new Dapr community manager. I'm based in the Netherlands, so hi from the Netherlands. I'm working as a data platform engineer at WantedL. And yeah, my background is in data infrastructure and developer productivity. And as a new Dapr community manager, I'm trying to increase the visibility of Dapr within the Python community. So yeah, happy to be here again.
I'll be honest. I'm a little jealous because both Mark and Dana are in the Netherlands, and I am not. So I'm the only community manager right now who is not in the Netherlands. So I feel like I need to talk to somebody about relocating or moving my house or something.
I agree. Yeah, you'll really enjoy the weather here compared to Florida.
I mean, honestly, I've never been, so I definitely need to visit at some point.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's nice for like a short holiday, but for living, I'm not too sure.
I would wait at least until May. So
until May.
Yes. It's cold. Yeah. Although to be honest, the last couple days were pretty sunny here, so it looks nice, but it feels like very cold. Yeah.
Gotcha.
But Dana, yeah, we're super excited that you're here. Also because you have quite a different background compared to myself and Cecil, right? Because Cecil and I are both from a .NET world and .NET background. So we're really happy with your Python background. So that's super exciting. And you also are more focused on platform engineering, right? So can you share a bit what your day-to-day work is in that role?
Yeah, sure. So day-to-day, I am working on building scalable data infrastructure for enabling developer productivity. So basically, you can think of it as providing an abstraction layer to reduce complexity for the developers regarding the data infrastructure. Some of the challenges I think is just how high complexity infrastructure has these days. I think we're all familiar with this distributed data storage and processing, containers, multiple environments, right? Balancing all of this while maintaining both performance and cost. keeping costs low, it can be very challenging.
Definitely, yeah. I can recognize it also indeed from Digrid, right? We're also careful on what we're spending, so getting good insights about that. That's also very important. So yeah, is it also something you want to have, like the teams to give like visibility on their cost or something? Are they responsible for that?
Yeah, FinOps. It's something we do as well as part of our day-to-day job, as well as like providing some insights on where things can be tweaked a bit to be more performant. So basically providing observability regarding this as well.
Very cool. Yeah, nice. All right. By the way, let us know if you have any questions yourself about Dynamite. Drop them in the chat. And of course, Dana's also now part of the Dapr Discord there as well. So also feel free to also reach out there. All right, let's move on, and we will just have a nice fireside chat with us three during this community call, and let's start about Dapr 1.15. So it has been a while in the making. I think we did like a celebration webinar quite some months ago, last year, to announce that 1.15 was almost there, and now it's finally there. So yeah, it's been many months in the making. And here are the highlights of release 1.15. And I would say that the major thing now is that Workflow API is stable. And that's where I think, that's also really the primary thing about 1.15. And that's also where I think most of the time went to getting this really stable and reliable and performant. So there's been many changes to the underlying workflow engine in Dapr now, and of course all of the SDKs are now aligned to use the same methods, and so it's very easy to use all of the SDKs. I will also demonstrate the Python one a bit later, but yeah, this is really where most of the effort went into for 1.15.
Yeah, I'm really excited about the workflow one. I remember when that came out, I was very excited about it, right? Because you would always have to use like another thing for your workflows, right? Like you'd have to use durable functions if you're an Azure person, or you'd have to use temporal or some other tool, right? And for me, like one of the main benefits of Dapr is, being able to not only abstract, but also kind of like centralize some of my application dependencies a little bit, and simplify that a little bit. And so being able to have like a workflow engine just kind of just like built into the tool that I'm already using just kind of makes it just an easier transition for me to kind of like incorporate those types of features in my application.
Yeah, I agree indeed. Yeah, if you're already using Dapr, then it's really a no-brainer to also use workflow. So a lot of people, I think, are excited that it's now stable, so they can use it in production workloads. So, but I think maybe this will also get some more interest from people maybe who are not using Dapr yet, but now see that, okay, there's this durable execution workflow engine in there, so they might give it a try. So yeah, I think it works in both directions.
Yeah, I was trying to remember what release was workflow introduced.
No, it's because I looked it up. It's in 1.10, so that was 2 years ago. Yeah, 2 years ago. Yeah, so it was February 2023.
Yeah, so this thing has been cooking for a long time, right? And it's finally ready to go. So definitely glad to see that it's officially stable now, and and it's out there. And I mean, and Mark, you could probably attest to this more than I can. I mean, we say it's stable now, but people have been using workflows in productions for a long time.
Definitely, yeah. And we're definitely very grateful of those customers who are running it, right? And who helped us testing a lot over the last couple of months, but actually over the last 2 years. Because of course, these workflows as code are very, people like them a lot. So some customers were really eager to try it out, and they really helped us in getting it really like stable and production ready. So thanks again for that. Yeah, you know who you are. Yeah.
And so I remember when it first came out. So I believe the workflow engine, just like a little bit of historical context from it, the workflow engine was a rewritten version. It's written in Go, and it's actually embedded in Dapr. And I want to bring it up because I think if you look across some of the other building blocks of Dapr, it's a little different, right? And I think as we go forward, I think the evolution of Dapr, you're going to see some different things being plugged into it in general. But specifically about workflow, like it's actually embedded in the Dapr runtime. So it's very different from like state store. It's very different from, configuration and secrets and all this other stuff, which is kind of like, hey, there's an implementation somewhere else. and we're just calling APIs through an abstraction, right? Like this, the workflow engine is actually in Dapr, right? It's high performance, it's written in Go, it's embedded in Dapr. And so it's actually, like Mark said, it's production ready. It's been cooking for a long time, and now it's just, it's now available for you folks to kind of start diving into.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And related to that is also actors, right? Because actors is also something that's really built into the Dapr runtime itself. So also doesn't come with any component model or something, but that also went through quite some improvements. It's mentioned here, improved actor reliability. I hope one of the core maintainers, that's Josh van Leeuwen, will actually write a blog post, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, about the actual improvements there. Because that also went through not a complete rewrite, but I think close to like a complete rewrite to make it much more reliable. And that's also beneficial to workflow, because workflow is based on top of Dapr actors. So both the workflow system and the actor system has been greatly improved in this release.
Yeah, I think actors, and if I'm not mistaken, the scheduler service as well. I think workflow uses both of those components of Dapr, right?
Yeah.
So I think a lot of work, like you mentioned, had to go into those things to make workflow stable, right? So again, it's one of those, we'll make these, enhancements and updates across the Dapr, the Dapr catalog, and it's just going to kind of continue to like evolve some of the other things that sit on top of it.
Yeah, that's also interesting about let's say the Dapr building blocks or the Dapr APIs, because most of the APIs are really like isolated, but some are built on top of each other, right? So you have like the Dapr state management API, which is key value store, but Dapr actors is using that internally, the state management API, and workflow is now built on top of actors. So you got also this stack of Dapr APIs that are built on top of each other.
Yeah,
which is cool to see, but sometimes also means that if you want to really make a big improvement, you have to indeed do some work really like 1 or 2 layers below, and to get that improvement more at the top.
Yeah. So Dana, I'm gonna pick on you for a second. So I'm not deeply like into the Python world. I love Python, but I'm not as deep into it probably as you are. What are some of like the I guess tools that you see developers use in that Python space for workflow? Like what are some of the other things you see people using there?
Yeah. So from data side, like Airflow is very common tool that I've seen using. From machine learning, Kidra is something that I've seen. It's like a YAML-based configuration that you can use for scheduling workflows. There is some built-in solutions like within Databricks. There is the jobs and the tasks. Those 3 are on top of my head.
Yeah. Okay. I've heard about Airflow before. Never used it. I have heard about it before. It'll be interesting to see how the Dapr workflow support would be able to like address some of those use cases as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, this is a call to all of our community members. So if you want to write like a comparison blog post across like workflow engines, please write that.
Yeah, Mark is giving you all homework to do, so please.
Okay. Let me go through some slides about the 1.15 release. I don't have a lot, but definitely. So we mentioned workflow. Stable now, and you can use all of these languages mentioned here, and you can all use them for production. It's great, and they all have the same method signature now as well. So that's great. We already mentioned the scheduler service now being stable, and indeed, so the scheduler is being used not only by the actors for the actor reminders, and now by default, but also workflow is using it, and the jobs API is using scheduler. The jobs API itself is still an alpha API, but the scheduler service, part of the Dapr control plane, that is now stable. And finally, the next big announcement of 1.15 is this new LLM Converstion API. It's like an abstraction over all of these LLM providers, so you can use just one uniform API, the Converstion method, to talk with other models from Anthropic and AWS Bedrock, DeepSeek, Hugging Face, Mistral, and OpenAI. And the Quickstarts that we're going to run later will demo some of these as well. So this is like Dapr's first introduction into the AI world, basically, right?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I think now it's a good bridge to actually start using it. So let me start with the Conversation API and then demo the Workflow API. And by the way, if you have questions, right, drop them in the comments, please. Let me switch to VS Code. So I'm using the Dapr Quickstarts repository. It's completely open source. Just go to the Dapr org and there's the Quickstarts repo. It has folders for all of the APIs. So now there's a folder named Conversation. And I'm going to use the Python as the SDK in this case to run this Python quick start. So the only
you're running in a code space too, right? Which is
yeah. Well, I'm running in a dev container, not in the code space actually, but I'm running a dev container indeed. Yeah, but it's named Dapr quick start code space. Yeah, but I'm a big fan of dev containers indeed. Yeah, it's nice that everything just comes like pre-installed, and I don't have to worry about dependencies missing or other stuff. So yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, and it's good to see that Dapr can run in that space too, right? Like just knowing that you don't have to do anything magical to get it to work in
exactly. Yeah, also for contributors, it's quite annoying, right? If you don't have the right tool set or the right dependencies, so it definitely speeds up contributing as well. Yeah. So the only dependency that my Python app is using is Dapr here, the 1.15 one. This is the application, right? So we are importing the Dapr client here, and we are importing the conversation input. So it's a type that our conversation API is going to use. So we are using this Dapr client now. We specify this input, which is a conversation input, and it has a couple of parameters. One of is the content, so that's actually the prompt that we're providing. In this case, what is Dapr? And this means explain it like I'm 5. You can give like an optional role to it if you want, and the other optional parameter is if you want to scrub the PII information, so the personally identifiable information. So that's actually a nice feature that you can use across all of the different LLM providers with this API. Just doing some print of the input here. We'll skip this for range now just to demonstrate something else. But here we are using the method. So that's the converse method, and it's still in alpha. So that's why it's named converse_alpha1. And here we are providing the name of the component. If you're familiar with Dapr, you know that every API, or almost every API, uses different components, and the component then specifies the underlying implementation. So we're going to look at that shortly. You provide the inputs, and optionally you can provide the temperature, and also optionally you can provide some kind of a context or conversation ID. We are looping over the outputs. So now let's have a look at this component, and that's called my LLM. So there's this folder called components here, and we have several options. So if you're just starting out with the conversation API, I recommend that you use the most basic component, which is actually not using an LLM provider, but it's called conversation.echo. And the only thing that will that this component will do is it will just echo back your input. So if you're just starting out with writing your program and just want to see is my code working, just use this very basic echo component. So you're not actually making a call to the LLM, right? Because every time you make a call, it will cost you money. So it's better to start out with this echo component, unless you like spending money a lot. I don't know. So here we see that the metadata name is my LLM, and this is also what's used in the application, right? So this is how Dapr knows that this component will be used. The other two versions are named like YAML.temp, so these won't be loaded. Okay, let me run this now. I'm using Dapr multi-app run, and even though this is just one application, I'm using this configuration file that points to the conversation folder where this Python file is, and I'm also specifying this components folder where the actual YAML file is that will be used. So here I'm using Dapr run -f dot, so that means that Dapr.yaml file will be loaded, and we're going to execute the program. And there we should just see the echo component being used. So let's use that. You see, here's our input. what is Dapr, and here we see our very basic, boring output, just echoing back, right? So I'm recommending that.
And like you mentioned, like this is all happening in process, right? Like this is not actually going out to an LLM or anything of the sort. It's all just happening right here.
Yeah. So we're making the call to the Dapr sidecar, but the Dapr sidecar just is echoing the input back to your application. So we're not calling out to an LLM just yet, but again, use is just for the first test purposes. So now let's make it more interesting. And for instance, let's use the Anthropic model here. So let me rename this to temp. So we're actually not using it. And let's use Claude here. Right, so again, we're using the same metadata name because that's what my application is using, but now we're using Conversation Anthropic. Here we're specifying a key in plain text, which of course you should never do that in production. You should use the built-in Dapr secrets for that. You can use secret references. And you specify the model here, which is Claude 3.5 Sonnet. And you can also specify, and I think this is optional, a cache. So this is actually very useful because if you make the same request to the model like a couple of times, you actually get back a cached response from Dapr. So again, it's just like cost savings, right? If you just give the same request, you're not paying for all these individual requests, because Dapr will actually use a cached response. All right. So now let's run this again. Now using Anthropic. Of course, now you're seeing an actual LLM is used because it takes some time. All right, so here we can see our input, and here is our output. I'll explain Dapr, distributed application runtime, like your 5, right? So it's interesting because it knows what this means. So and this is then the response back.
And we got a quick comment from Mike. I think that's worth highlighting really quick. And Mike wants to know, how can we get the rest of your API key that you're sharing there?
That's why I'm zoomed in a lot, so you can't see the rest of the API key. Okay, I'm going to switch to OpenAI now. So Mike, you can have a look at another partial key.
Another partial key.
All right. So now I've disabled the Anthropic YAML file, and now we're using the OpenAI AI version. So we're using GPT 4.0 mini in this case, and with the same caching here. And actually, now it might be actually a good idea to also show the caching. Let me see. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to move some more windows. I'm going to share the OpenAI dashboard in the back. So that's here. And at the moment, we see that today I made just one request. Right. So what I'm going to do now is I'll enable that for each loop to make a couple of requests. But that should only result in one request made to OpenAI, because the rest should be cached responses. Okay, nice. So I'm moving this out. So I will then change the application code a bit, right? So now I'll do 2 calls to the Conversation API, but that should result in only one call to the LLM. Okay, running it again. And again, you immediately know that it's working because you have to wait a couple of seconds. All right. So what we have now is twice the output, right? But the output is exactly the same. Okay, so here is the input, and here is the first output response. Here, right? Use cases. This is still the first output. Conclusion, yes. Yeah, and then here is then the second output response, which is exactly the same. Okay, so if I now move back my OpenAI dashboard, and I need to refresh this, let's just do this. Yeah, so now it's just, it was 1 request earlier, now it's 2 requests. I just made 2 requests, but this is not 3 requests, right? So here we can see that the caching is actually working.
Nice.
Nice.
All right.
Nice.
Okay, yeah, so that's a pretty straightforward example. But I definitely recommend you when you're just like starting out with your application, just use the echo to make sure that you're not making real calls without spending a lot of money, and then indeed make sure you specify this caching. And another tip, not related to Dapr, but make sure you set up some limits for all of your LLMs, so you don't spend too much there without you knowing.
Yeah, very nice. Also, see, you can tweak the how deterministic the output can be, like with the temperature.
Yeah, with the temperature. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, you have and for all of these LLM providers, you have exactly the same. The same method and the same inputs, so you don't have to think very much. If you want to switch between providers, you still have the same API. All right.
So I had a quick question as you're showing that just now. So I think it's great that we have the caching support. I actually don't see a lot of people doing that when they do these types of demos, and I think it's great that Dapr comes like right out the gate and be like, okay, we're gonna help you save money because LLMs are expensive. But I'm also wondering, is there any support for conversation history? Because if you're already caching the conversation, do we support conversation history yet, or is that one of those things that's coming later?
I don't know, to be honest. I don't think so. And this is also like my first try with the conversation API. I don't know. It's a good question. Yeah, I have to look into what's being done now. But since it's alpha, probably not yet.
Yeah.
But
and I think that's a good point that you bring up too. And for folks that are watching, like, so this is an alpha API, right? Like this is brand new, hot off the presses. And it's not done. It is not production ready, right?
No, exactly. We want you to try it out though and give us feedback on how we can improve it. So we definitely want you to try it, but not for production workloads. Yes.
Exactly. So definitely take a look at it and try it out. If you have suggestions about features and things you'd like to see, definitely let us know. I know for me, like I said, like I definitely love to see some support for conversation, or what would that conversation history look like. And then even things maybe in the future like MCP, like model context protocol. I know that's something that a lot of people are talking about with adding tools into your LLMs. I think Dapr would be a great tool to add the tool. I'm trying not to use tool too many times, but I think Dapr would be a great helper to add your tools with.
Great.
And even things like, with like embeddings and vector databases, and I feel like the AI space is so rich and also constantly evolving, and so there's definitely a lot of opportunity for Dapr to help out.
Definitely, yeah. And very, very soon there will be an announcement from CNCF in this space that involves Dapr. I cannot mention anything else yet. So there will be more news.
I love how secretive you're being. Like you come on the stream and you're being so mysterious and secretive. And now I want to know what it is, but I can't find out. I have to wait just like everyone else. But it's I won't hold it against you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, I think now is a good moment to demo workflow.
Yeah, let's do it.
Again, I'm doing the Python one here. All right, and what we have here is like an order processor demo. Let me start with this one. So this is the application that will actually does the management of the workflow. Right? So that's not the workflow itself, but this one actually will start it and terminate it. So what happens here? Oh, let me first show what the dependencies are. So we are using the dependency on Dapr itself, a Dapr client, and the workflow is available as an extension. All right. So we are importing several things here, the Dapr client, but also the Dapr workflow client. I think that's pretty clear why you need that. Let me scroll down a bit. We have some print statements. Here we are starting the workflow runtime, right? Which is the Dapr process that contains the workflow. So it's starting up here. Then we create an instance of the Dapr workflow client, and that client is then used to manage your workflow. We prepare an inventory. We create a new instance of the Dapr client, and here we have like a helper method to actually restock our inventory. So each time you run this sample, you start with a fresh stock of paper clips, cars, and computers. Then here we set up what's going to be our order payload. So this will be the input for the workflow. So we prepare an order payload, and we are ordering, in this case, a car, I think was the default item. Yeah, so we are ordering cars. And we just order one, and we have then a total cost associated to it. So that's our order payload. And here we are using the Dapr workflow client to schedule a new workflow. And so that's the terminology that we're using. We are scheduling it because we are actually handing the management over to the Dapr sidecar, to the Dapr process that contains the workflow. So you could think of it as we are starting it, but our application is actually not starting the workflow. So we are giving Dapr the responsibility of scheduling that workflow. We have to mention what workflow we want to run. So that's the order processing workflow. I'll show you the code for that, and what input we're giving. And we are giving the order there. Now, this is a console app, which is probably not a very typical thing that you'll be running in production with this. But since it's a console app, this is in like a try-catch block, and we use the workflow client to wait until the workflow is completed. I don't think this is like a good example for production workloads, because these workflows can run for hours or days or weeks or months, right? So it's not very likely that your application will be waiting until that workflow is completed. What you typically have is you schedule it. It's more like a fire and forget. That workflow does all kinds of activities, and then at a certain moment, of course, it will be done. But probably as part of one activity, it calls another service, or it puts a message on a topic to indicate that this process is done. So this is more demo code, so we can easily run it and show what's happening. All right, so let's actually look at the workflow code itself. All right. So what we have here, let me scroll down to the workflow. So it's important that we instruct the workflow runtime that this workflow definition exists, because Dapr needs to know that this application contains some workflow definitions. So that's why we are using this attribute here to give instruction to the runtime to register this workflow. So here's the order processing workflow definition. And you'll have access to a workflow context in that workflow, and as input it as the order payload. Okay, some text here, and here we can see that we're using this context, this Dapr workflow context, to call activities, and activities are like the basic building blocks of a workflow. Because what happens in a workflow is we just make a sequence of all kinds of activities, and the activities are actually responsible for the work. So in an activity, you make a call to a database, or you make a call to another endpoint. So anything that's not deterministic is part of an activity. The only code that you should have in your workflow is just calls to activities and some business logic, some if-else statements based on the output of the activities. So what we're doing here is we are calling an activity, and this is the notify activity, and we are passing in a notification object, which is just a message. Again, and this is just demo code, so this will just make some print statements, but in real life, you could maybe have some kind of a real notification service that sends like text messages or stuff like that. Then the next one is the verify inventory activity. So this will actually check against a state store if there's enough inventory available. And let me actually go into that activity. Again, the workflow runtime you need to register this activity. So the workflow runtime needs to know about it. So that's what's happening here. And in this activity, you have access to a workflow context, which typically you don't use. And there's an inventory request here. And what we're doing in this activity, we are using the Dapr client to actually check the state. And so here we're using the Dapr client, and we do a get state to verify if the state is there. And if there's no state there, we give back an inventory result of false. Otherwise, we give back an inventory result of true if the quantity of the inventory is adequate. If it's not adequate, we give back a false result. So that's a typical thing you do in your activities, right? Reaching out to a state store. And again, it's nice that you can use Dapr, because if you're using Dapr workflow, you can also use all of the other Dapr APIs in your activity code.
Here's a question that I should know the answer to, and I do not. I feel bad that I don't. If I write my workflow orchestrator code in language X, right? Because we support different languages like .NET and Python and so on.
I see where you're going.
Can I write my activities in different languages, or does the workflow and the activities have to be in the same language?
Yeah. Well, I'm saying yes, but yeah, because at the moment the entire workflow definition, so workflow and activities, needs to be hosted in the same application.
Okay.
Yeah. So at the moment, yes. So I've seen requests before if you can like split up the workflow and its activities across different applications. And I think when Dapr achieves that, then I think it might be possible to have different language implementations for activities. Yeah, interesting one. Yeah. That'll be a nice one. Yeah. And because at the moment there have also been because it's also related to the actor framework, of course, right? Because you can actually have actors of different languages talking to each other. Sometimes serialization is still an issue because some of the language SDKs serialize objects in a slightly different way. So that's definitely something that also needs to be taken into account here.
Yeah, and I think for folks that are watching that might want to do something like that, a consideration could probably be, I'm going to have, let's call it my main workflow in one, but then maybe one of my activities calls to a separate workflow, right? Yeah. A sub workflow, but not really, right? But it just happens to exist in a different place, and I could send a message, calling pub sub or whatever the case is to kick that one off, and then continue down my path, right? So that could be an option too. Definitely. Again, as folks are thinking about like, how do I compose these different things together? And if something is over there and one thing is in a different place, like you probably, again, use some of those existing Dapr building blocks like pub sub and state store and service invocation to kind of like separate those pieces out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think in general, it's a good recommendation to keep your workflows as small as possible, because otherwise it can also be very hard to understand what's going on if you have like dozens and dozens of activities in a workflow. And so there are things like sub workflows or child workflows. Yeah. So you can do like nesting of workflows, but again, if you like have like 10 layers deep of nesting child workflows, that can also be very difficult to understand. Yeah. So you can definitely do your approach, break it up into like a separate workflow in a separate application. That's definitely doable. Yeah. So everyone is asking, can the activity use Dapr resiliency? Inside the activity, yes. So if you are in an activity and you are doing a call to what we saw here, we are doing a call to get state. So if this request to the state store fails, then the Dapr runtime will retry that call for state. So it by default it uses the defaults of resiliency policies of Dapr. You can override them definitely. So that's the built-in Dapr resiliency that we already know of. In addition, you can provide some extra methods. You see it here. You can specify retry policies also when you call activities. So everything that happens inside an activity and you use the Dapr API inside an activity, the Dapr resiliency policies will kick in. But when it comes to like call an activity and to retry that specific call, so it hasn't actually called the activity yet. And you can also retry that. So there are actually two different ways to use resiliency in this case. Good question, Aaron. All right. So this is like I would say a typical workflow. You do some kind of task chaining of different activities, and you use some if-else logic based on the results of those activities. Again, we see some more notifications done here. I think what's also typical is where I see this here. Now this is some more task chaining where we, for instance, will request approval. This is a nice pattern to actually explain a bit. So this is called the external interaction pattern or the human interaction pattern. So let's say in this case, we order something very expensive, over $5,000. Someone needs to give approval for this purchase. So what you can do then is you can instruct the workflow to wait until an event comes into this workflow instance that contains that approval event. So what happens here in this request approval activity, that some message is sent maybe to your manager who can decide about this purchase. And then we can wait. And so this workflow won't continue. We will wait until an external event comes back into the workflow, and that's called an approval event. And that has the payload that then decides about the rest of the execution of this workflow. Now, the different languages handle this timeout event a bit differently. So, for instance, for .NET, I know you can specify a timeout as part of this wait for external event call. But in Python, you actually define two tasks. So what you have here is we have a task that waits for an event, and we create another task, a timeout event, because what happens if that approval event never comes in? And if the approval event never comes in, it will mean this workflow instance is stuck forever. It will never complete. So it's always a good practice to have a timeout event. In this case, you have a timeout of 30 seconds, but of course, it's totally up to you. That can be days, weeks, months. And what happens here is at this moment, the workflow instance will wait when one of these is completed. So that happens when there's the yield when any. So either the approval task completes, or if it doesn't complete, the timeout event completes. And so this is kind of a fail-safe way to still complete your workflow. So in case if the winner task is the timeout event, we'll do like a notification and the order result is processed false. But if the approval result task is actually winning, oh no, in that case, so if the order approval result is winning, but the approval result is false, right? Because this is a Boolean result, so that can be true or false. If it's false, then also the order was not approved. But otherwise, we are continuing because it means it is approved. Yeah, and by the way, this is indeed an example of so waiting for an external event. But this part is also an example of fanning out and fanning in, because what happens here is we are fanning out two tasks, but we're not yielding them right here. We're yielding them together here. So this is the fan out part. We're doing two tasks, but we're waiting until one of them completes. You can also wait until both of them will complete, but that doesn't make any sense here. But the fan out, fan in pattern is also a very popular pattern to use in Dapr workflow. Yeah, then the final part that I want to mention is it is also quite normal to do try catches in your workflow, because that allows you to do compensation actions. So here is an update inventory activity that we're calling. But in case that fails and we catch an exception, we can run another activity as a compensation action. So this can be, for instance, useful if you do a payment first, but then at a later moment something fails and you want to give people their money back. You can use this try catch exception handling for a compensation action to give people back their money in case something else in the process has failed. And so this process is, of course, depends purely on your business logic, right? So you're completely free to how you do that. And so there's no like built-in concept of a compensation action, but this way of handling this allows you to do compensation actions just by calling another activity. Okay, I've explained, I think, most of the bits of the workflow, and all of the activities are like structured in the same way, right? So we all do a registration of this, but then of course the different activities have like different implementations, and then most of it is just demo code and not calling out to anything.
Yeah.
But I didn't run it yet, so let's run it, and we'll see a lot of log statements. happening here.
And while that's running, another question too, as workflows are executing, I'm guessing they get instrumented with like the open telemetry tracing support that's already in Dapr. So if I look inside of Zipkin or Jaeger or any of those types of things, like I should be able to see my workflow activities.
Exactly. Yeah. You should see that in it. Yeah. Let me first get back to this. But all of the regular Dapr stuff like observability and resiliency is all part of this. So yeah, definitely. I won't take too long just by showing this, but so here we see that the logging starting order workflow, purchasing one car. Here we see that some of the activities we have received an order. We see another activity being called the verify inventory activity, the process payment activity, update inventory activity. And finally, we should need always see this command here, that orchestration completed with status completed. So it's always should always be shown, or it's not completed, failed. That could also be one. And by the way, all of this, so workflows are stateful, right? So all of the state changers are captured in storage, and by default it's Redis in this case because we haven't specified anything else. So let's see, this should be just to give you an indication, but all these things here, so it's prefixed with the application ID, but all this Dapr internal default application ID workflow keys here, these are all state that belong to this execution of this workflow and all of the activities. Yeah, so it's application ID, again, like an internal ID for the name and the workflow, and then this is the workflow instance. And in here is then the payload for each of these activities. For instance, I don't see it now because we don't see it like visibly here. But yeah, you can be assured that all of this data is stored, all of the inputs, but also all of the outputs.
And when the workflow is done, does that get cleaned up, or?
I was about to mention that. Yeah, good question. No, so purging is not done automatically. So that's up to you, because you should be, let's say, in control over how long you want this history of this workflow to be available. Yeah. So there is on the workflow client there is a purge method, but yeah, you should definitely run this method like on a schedule, maybe daily or weekly or whatever, because otherwise you'll be collecting all of this historical information over a long time. So yeah, that's very important. Yeah.
And that makes sense too, because as people think about auditing, like if I get audited, right?
Yeah.
I want to have that historical information that I could check and verify what exactly was going on. So that makes sense.
No, indeed. And maybe it would be nice if you can still maybe configure that somewhere, and maybe still in the YAML file or something. And so now it's completely on you, which I think is also fair to begin with. But yeah, I can also imagine that will be maybe some kind of configurable way to have some kind of TTL for your workflow workflow state.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. I think we have a question on YouTube really quick. This one is from Ranjit, and well, actually, I think he has two questions. This was about earlier when you were showing off the Conversation API. So pretty much asking, are you going to support other things, right? I think you showed Anthropic, you showed Open API, and you showed the local one where it is just the echo.
Yeah. So at the moment it's just these 6, well, including that echo one, but the echo one is not really LLM. But so at the moment it's all of these LLM providers, and each of these providers have, of course, like different models as well. So I think all of the models that that are available you can use, because in the end it's just a string that you provide in the YAML file to configure what model you're using for all these LLM providers. But yeah, of course, everything is like text based, right? So it's still like the Conversation API, so it doesn't do anything with like images or documents or stuff like that. Yeah, you're limited to the text, to the conversation prompts.
Yeah, and I mean, and this person did mention Hugging Face, and so they will be support. It looks like Hugging Face is here on the image, right? So it looks like the answer to that is yes. Like we will support.
Yes, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Looks like we got another one from Aaron super quick. He's asking, speaking of observability, is there a way to get the current state of the workflow? Also, is there a way to get all the workflows that are waiting for an external action?
Ooh, a nice one. So the workflow client, the Dapr workflow client, has a method called, I think it's called getState, and you specify then the instance ID of the workflow you want to retrieve the state from. So yes, that method is there. But that also means you have to know the ID of the workflow, right? So as soon as you schedule a workflow, you get back the instance ID. So you have to make sure that you store that instance ID somewhere, so you can use that later when you want to check from the status. So is it done, or maybe is it failed for some reason? So that's there. Is there a way to get the workflow that are waiting for an external action? I don't think that is there. I don't think there's a method to check. Are we waiting for an external event? There are some ways around that. So you can set a custom status on the workflow instance. So yeah, you could set a specific value that you control, indicating that it's waiting for this external action. And when you use the getState method, you also get back that custom state that you set. So that will be one way to deal with it now.
Yeah.
But yeah, good.
I was thinking about that for a second. I can imagine why you'd want to do something like that in the first place. Because I can imagine, let's say you're waiting for me to like press a button to approve something, right? Maybe there's a timeout, and so on timeout, I could have like something that says, hey, remember you didn't press the button. Hey, remember you didn't press, like some kind of prompting action that happens for that.
It's a good one. Yeah. Nice.
I guess I'm wondering if that's more of a Dapr thing, or if that's more of a application thing. Because like you said, you could set a status, you can have a cron job or something of the sort. Like you could use the Dapr scheduler service to schedule something to check for you.
Definitely. The jobs API, indeed. You can definitely, using the tools out there or the APIs out there, you can definitely make something already to have this functionality. I mean, if there's a lot of ask from the community to build something specific to make this easier, and maybe the maintainers can then prioritize this. But at the moment, you can get, I think, the functionality you want by combining some of the other APIs.
Kendall, looks like Kendall's in the chat. She had a comment. Hi, Kendall.
Related timers. So you want to know maybe when they time out, for instance. That would be a nice one. I agree. That's what also makes the Dapr project interesting, right? Because it provides all of these different APIs, but also sometimes we see this combination of different APIs, right? So the same for like distributed log or the outbox pattern, which combines like PubSub and state. So maybe there will be some enrichment combining indeed jobs API with workflow. Interesting. Really good questions this session. Great. We only have 5 minutes left. I really need to get going for the final part. So let's move. So with Waldo will be here next time to do the .NET ones. I again want to quickly mention that we still are looking for maintainers for the JavaScript SDK. So if you know someone who is good with JavaScript, then I would urge them to contact me. It's in a good state, but at the moment, some of the other maintainers, for instance, is helping out with JavaScript. But of course, it would be in better hands if with some people with very good JavaScript and Node TypeScript knowledge. Okay, quick couple of minutes for the community show and tell, which is also quite a bit. Still some upcoming events. I'm speaking next week at Future Tech in the Netherlands. Divine Odazi is speaking in London at SRE Day later this month. Then there is a lot of things happening in the first week of April, because then it's KubeCon in London, and we have a lot of people speaking about Dapr or about Dapr and something else in the open source cloud native ecosystem. So again, I will include all of the links in Discord, in the show and tell channel. But yeah, there's plenty of Dapr buzz going on at KubeCon, which is great to see. Then 2 more events in May where Nico Vermeer is talking about Dapr, one in .NET Days Romania and one at NDC Oslo. Then we have quite some blog posts, and I do want to share them live here. So of course, it's the blog post that 1.15 is now available on the Dapr blog. Definitely check this out. There are also some breaking changes, so definitely read through that as well. I wrote a post that goes a bit deeper into the release highlights, and then also contains lots of source code samples, so to get you really up and running when you want to try the Conversation API or some of the other APIs. So have a look at that. Again, related to KubeCon, there's a blog post on the Dapr blog to announce that we have a project kiosk at the Project Pavilion. So if you want to say hi to some of us, I'll be there. One of the maintainers is there, Mike. One of the members of the steering committee is also there, Ollie. Mark and Jeroen will also be there, not the entire time. But definitely drop by and say hi, especially if you're using Dapr in a POC or production. We definitely want to hear from you. Then Milan Jovanovic wrote a very nice introduction for .NET Dapr developers. So definitely check that out if you're new to Dapr in the .NET ecosystem. And what else was there? Oh yeah, my colleague Bilkin wrote a very nice post about well, this word is like horrible, operationalizing LLM interactions with Dapr's new Conversation API. I don't know. I think we need to rename this, Fraser. I know it. But yeah, but it's a very good blog post because it's really nicely built up. It first again starts with the echo components, right, and just using not even application, just making curl calls. So that's great, but then it goes like deeper and using some more SDK methods and also making sure it's resilient and also secure. So it's a nice build up of a good deep dive in this Conversation API. So definitely have a look at this one. All right, what is left? Of course, videos. So Milan also made a video about getting started with Dapr and .NET Aspire. Definitely have a look. We have Rodrigo again with this whole series of Dapr in action, and now he's talking about Dapr workflow. So well, it's a good timing since it's now stable. And yesterday there was a video where it's very nice. It's called the You Choose, and some open source projects get like 5 minutes to do explain or highlight their open source project. So Mauricio Salaboy was talking about Dapr for 5 minutes, and then at the end of these 3, let's say, open source pitches, people get to vote, and based on the popularity vote, the 2 hosts of this show will do like more of a deep dive and actually implement something with the tool they got the pitch about. So if you are a Dapr fan, and you are because that's why you're here, and if you're part of the CNCF Slack, go to the You Choose channel in the CNCF Slack, and there you can vote for Dapr, so we can have like more Dapr video content. Right, a lot of social stuff again, of course. People very excited about the Dapr release. Kai, who is also watching now, who's been very active with creating workshops, also based on some Dapr workshops. So great to see that. I still need to look into it, Kai. I'm sorry, I will do it. I will share some pixel stickers at KubeCon. So make sure you drop by the Project Pavilion. And yeah, some other people again sharing that Dapr now has some AI capabilities, which is really cool. I want to highlight a couple of Discords interactions here. So Patrick found like a kind of an issue with the Dapr docs since some stuff changed now for actors. So thank you, Patrick and Josh, for picking that up. And out of nowhere, there was someone who was really active in contributing to the Java SDK. So thank you very much, Loney 2003 and Celeboy for picking it up, because Celeboy is doing a lot on the JavaScript SDK there. So that's great to see. And yeah, to end of it, there are many ways to interact with us in the Dapr community. This is one of us, of course, joining these community calls, which is great to see a lot of interaction here. So thank you for that. The Dapr Discord, we are now with 8,000 people there. So definitely drop by. It's the best place if you want some answers or share some feedback. Again, we also love to see contributions. It doesn't have to be code contributions. It can also be like documentation contributions, or maybe you want to share that you wrote a blog post about Dapr, or you are doing a video about Dapr, or a presentation. We give away all of these digital badges for all of your contributions. So we love to see that there. So thanks for sticking around for over an hour now for this Dapr community call. Feel free to scan this badge and to show that you are a Dapr community supporter. Oof, that was a lot.
It was a good one, though. I think today was a really good episode.
Yes, it was great. Yeah. So yeah, thanks very much, everyone, to both our co-hosts, but also to everyone attending. Thanks.
Thank you all for joining us. We appreciate it.
Yeah. See you next time, and next time is probably in 2 weeks again when we do a big announcement in the Dapr and AI space. So see you then. Bye.
Bye.